When I was 28, my mum died. It doesn't sound young. It sounds like you're an adult, like you should be able to handle tragic life circumstances like a grown-up without losing your shit or turning to casual alcoholism. But the truth is, my mum had been diagnosed as terminally ill 5 years or so prior. I had been living with her death since I was 23. And whether you're 23 or 28, honestly, losing your mum and realizing mortality will reduce anyone to a child. It reduced me to a child, but it also made me realize my humanity. When I was 30, 2 years or so later, my dad asked me to come round and help him sort through my mum's wardrobe. He wanted me to tell him what I wanted to keep and what could go to charity. I put it off. I put it off for a really long time until it was almost unavoidable. And I remember the day that I finally dragged myself round to my family home. It felt heavy and sad inside my house when I arrived. It was a weekday morning, and it was the second time that I felt the kind of sadness that swallowed me whole and physically hurt, like somebody was squeezing my heart and making me crumple under the pressure of it. It was the second time that I'd seen my dad in visible, outward anguish since she'd passed. And it was maybe only the second time that I know he has cried. I know this not because I saw him, but because he had to leave the room at least twice while we were going through her things. I remember thinking that it was unexpected that this act of going through my mum's clothes could be matched in emotional difficulty only by the day that we spread her ashes on her favourite beach. 3 golden miles of sand in Cornwall, consumed by a tempest. It was dark, and the 4 of us, we fought the elements as we walked, spreading her ashes, barely being able to see a hand in front of us, let alone each other's drawn-out faces. So funny then that the second saddest moment, it wasn't that she wasn't present at my wedding. It wasn't that she wasn't sitting at home watching the TV as I talked about my work on the news. Instead, it was the removal of her image, her identity, the displacement of our family memories that was so closely interwoven in between the threads of the clothes that she wore. You see, clothing is important to us. We are so obviously emotionally invested in it. It holds our most precious memories, our most treasured moments between its love lines and its threadbare patches. So isn't it ironic then that as a society, we have such a throwaway attitude towards it? How have we got to a place where we're so willing to discard emotional moments? How have we got to a place where we're so detached from the human and environmental cost of clothing? If clothing and fashion are so important to us, why do we discard the physical keepsakes of the moments of our lives, from our wardrobes to the scrap heap? Personally, I often remember moments I've had with certain pieces. A scarf I left on my mum's bed during her last days in hospital. I'd leave it there every night when I went home to sleep so that there would be a piece of me with her while I was away. A black corset dress that I wore on stage the first time I sung in public, and my grandma cried. A vintage Lanvin shirt I found in Paris the year I became an honorary French girl, living way above the city in a little apartment above a boulangerie. Très chic. These pieces of clothing, they're our memories. They are the fabric of our lives, and what we do with them is our legacy. So today, I want to talk to you about the things that make up the fabric of our lives, the things that connect us to our humanity. I wanted to start by talking about my mum, probably because I'm so much like her. I sound like her, I dress like her, I can love fiercely, loyally, just like her, and I can also be pretty unforgiving, just like her as well. So you better clap at the end. And this old thing, this is my nan's skirt. She wore it to my mum's wedding, to her golden wedding anniversary, and to my wedding. And now I'm wearing it because I'm my mother's daughter, and she was my nan's daughter. And I want you to know them. I want you to know her specifically for all of the good things. Because I think as humans, that's all we really want, to be remembered for a good thing. So today, I'm going to give you a good thing to be remembered for, if you so choose. So, why did I tell you these stories? I hope that they will illuminate you on how clothing can help us transmit our lives to future generations. It holds so much power. It can help us reimagine ourselves, build our identities, even remember our lost loved ones. But it also has a pretty ugly side to it. The human cost of fashion is immense. Some of you may know that in 2013, 4,900 miles away in Dhaka, the Rana Plaza factory collapsed, killing 1,000 people. Now, those people, they died because even though the manufacturers inside the building knew that the building wasn't safe, it was more important to them to keep the machine that is fast fashion moving at pace than it was to safeguard the lives of the people working within the building. Right now, in Australia, fires have only just stopped burning, raging. People have lost their homes, animals have lost their habitats, species have been lost to the world forever, all because the temperatures have risen beyond record highs. And if you understand that fashion produces more CO2 than aviation and shipping combined, you understand that these things are not unconnected. Fashion is also one of the most at-risk industries when it comes to modern slavery. And if you consider yourself to be a feminist, which we all should nowadays, you should be concerned about this because 80% of the garment workers making our clothes are women. Women who don't get a living wage, and they are the sole breadwinner often of their families. Women who report being harassed at work in their factories. Women who have to work untenable hours with no legal rights to protest. And the Earth's resources, we pillage them for fashion. There are water shortages, for example, and it can take up to 2,700 litres of water to make one t-shirt. That's 9 baths worth of water. And arguably, even more distressing for me personally, is the way we discard the things that we claim to treasure. Every second, a garbage truckload of clothing goes to landfill. And these things can take thousands of years to decompose, all the while emitting CO2 into the atmosphere. All of this is the weighty cost of fashion. It's pretty stressful when you think about it in context, right? But thankfully, the kids are out in force, a new generation marching for change. They want to do things differently. They care about the world and each other, and they're wielding a blueprint for a different kind of humanity. They're saying enough is enough. And when it comes to consumer purchasing power, Gen Z are actually the largest consumer cohort, and they say they would boycott brands and pay more for sustainable and ethical clothing and product. And use of the hashtag sustainable fashion, this has tripled in just 5 years. Topics like slow fashion, ethical fashion, and sustainable fashion have been trending consistently in Europe and the US because public opinion is changing. And this has spurred creative innovation and concepts that can help us to revere clothing and give it the respect it really deserves. So what can you do? How can you get involved? What can you be inspired by, and what can you try? Let's start by circling back to Rana Plaza and the campaign that came off the back of this tragic event, Fashion Revolution. Fashion Revolution urged people to start asking questions about who was making their clothes, but it also provides an educational platform where you can learn everything about fashion, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it provides a community and tools for people to actively solutionize the problems that fashion is facing and we're facing. And then there's Charity Fashion Live. This is a campaign I devised to celebrate the worth of secondhand clothing. We recreate London Fashion Week looks live in real time as they come out on the catwalk, using only what we can find in a single charity shop. Sounds pretty crazy, but it works every time. And then there's fashion rental. So there's now a community of lenders that you can borrow from at the touch of a button. You could rent what I'm wearing, for example. You'd get a cool outfit for a few days, and I'd make a few bob or two, but best of all, we wouldn't be contributing to overproduction of products and fashion and new things that we don't need, and we'd be reutilising existing wardrobes. You can even rent your baby's clothes now. So you may not know this, but babies actually get through 7 sizes of clothing in just 2 years. But now you can order a bundle of clothes and keep them until your baby grows up a size, and then you can return them. They get cleaned and sent on to another family and repeat. And it's really important that we continue looking for these ways of using our clothes, continuing to use our clothes, because only 1% of textiles actually get recycled. And if we can extend the active life of our clothing for just 9 months, we can reduce our water, waste, and carbon impacts of these clothes by 30%. But if you're not ready for access over ownership, you could always shop secondhand, Depop, Vestiaire, even your local charity shop. Just imagine if we all started shopping secondhand or wearing secondhand as a first port of call. We could flip the switch. But if there's one thing, just one thing, I could urge you to do, it would be to care for your clothes, to give them the long life they deserve, to care for them whether you bought them on the high street or in a designer boutique or in a vintage shop, as though you're handing them down to a loved one, a sister, a daughter, a granddaughter even. These pieces of clothing, give them the long life that they deserve. This is your opportunity to communicate to future generations. This is your legacy around whether you chose to lift the world and humanity up or you took without regard and replenishment. This story, it has alternate conclusions, and it's up to you to decide how it ends. Thank you.